Hey folks, Tim Miller here, and I got to tell you, with all that's going on in our country, the importance of situational awareness can't be overstated. But there's been a lot of violence in the Middle East as well, and in particular, Israel. I've been there 6 times. I've worked very closely with Israeli security forces, and quite frankly, they're some of the best in the world. Usually, they're very, very observant because they realize the danger is always around this. But let's go to this gas station. An Israeli soldier's talking there. He doesn't notice a person come up behind him, stab him in the neck, and try to kill him. Now he's fighting for his life. He recovers, gets out of the lock, see the blood, and now he's going to begin to deal with the assailant. Obviously, he's able to draw his firearm. He's able to put an accurate fire, but now he's got a crisis on his hands because he's been stabbed in the neck. We know the carotid artery, you don't have a lot of time. So now you've gone from normal to fighting for your life medically in about a second. Now, we're going to talk in a minute about the before, during, and after this attack. But let me start by saying, folks, in this case, he ends up surviving. Bad guy, he gets to stay on the floor, but he ends up surviving. And that there's a number of reasons that he does. He knows how to care for himself, try to suppress that bleeding. He gets emergency services fairly quickly. But folks, I got to tell you, everything that happened may have been influenced if he was situationally aware of who comes in the door. Let me give you a little tip. Wherever you go, restaurant, wherever, try to sit in a position where you can observe the door. Because if someone's coming in to rob it, if someone's coming in that's mentally deranged, if someone's coming in that has an intentional desire to kill people, active shooter, you want to see them. You want to be able to identify them. That's why when you notice, most cops, most law enforcement try to sit back to the wall, covering the entrance to where they have time to initiate the fight. They're not waiting to have the fight initiated and then they've got to recover. Let's take a look at this again. Let's go very slowly. And if you look, now I want you to look at the suspect's body language. He's got his hand in his pocket. Now, the soldier has no idea that he's about to fight for his life. He's distracted. I don't know what it is that he's looked at. But, you know, from that position, if you think about it, if he pivoted that right foot back, he could have looked at that, but still had situational awareness of people coming in. Because look how fast it happens. Suspect comes out, and now the knife's in, and he's trying literally to kill him. Fortunately, the soldier has defensive tactics training, and he's able to break the hold, put him down, but now he's got a problem. He's bleeding, and he will bleed to death without treatment. But notice how calm and cool he's able to pull his weapon, and he's able to put the suspect down, and the problem's over from the suspect. But is the fight over? Well, let's talk about the before, the during, and the after. We touched on the before. He's in a gas station, very public place, and he's in uniform. Very public broadcast of, hey, this is what I represent. Listen, police officers, if you're listening to this, that could be you, because that maniac who targeted the soldier, he didn't have anything else on his mind. Well, guess what, officers? There are folks that don't like you, and we're seeing the attacks on police officers. We did a video not too long ago. I think it was Detroit. Similar situation. 2 guys jumped a uniformed police officer, tried to take his weapon, and he's in a fight for his life, standing in line trying to get some gum. So beforehand, let's talk about this. What could have prevented it? Well, if the soldier was practicing situational awareness, he would have noticed body language. Because, folks, let me tell you something. If you know what to look for, body language is huge in terms of a pre-attack indicator. We look for that in the Secret Service. We look for body language suggesting a person was potentially going to get violent. That fixed stare, a tense body posture. In this case, he's locked into a knife in his hand. He's moving slowly and carefully. Folks, that body language should have screamed, hey, you got a problem here. This is a problem. But he didn't notice it because he wasn't in a position to see it. And let me encourage you, when you go into restaurants, you go in anywhere you go, even if you're standing in line, be aware of your situational awareness around you. Hey, is anybody doing anything unusual? A body language analysis can help prevent you from being hurt or seriously injured. And let me say something else. People positioning themselves for attacks or robbery, they're nervous. They're nervous or they're high on drugs. Either behaviors you can pick up if you're alert. So before, if he had postured himself a little different, tactically, he should have thrown that right foot around. And if you're looking at something, I get it, but you've got in the background, you've got a situational awareness for someone walking in the door. And quite frankly, folks, when we train firearms, that's a huge issue. If you're in a conflict and you've got to reload, you pull that weapon in and you reload up here to where you still have situational awareness. I see too many shooters because of bad habits. They're reloading way down here, and that means that they're not able to see. So beforehand, he should have been postured better. He might have had better situational awareness. But what about during the incident itself? I got to tell you, this soldier responds with absolute courage and with skill, despite having a knife in his neck. And folks, you got to remember something. When you're in the middle of a conflict, when I've been in the middle of a conflict, the greatest battle's over your mind. Your skills are needed, no question. But remember, 90% of the skills needed in conflict is right here. And you could easily spiral out of control with a knife stuck in your neck. You could say, oh man, I'm dead. Well, guess what? He didn't. He didn't say I'm dead. He said, not only am I alive, but I'm going to fight and I'm going to make sure this guy doesn't do it to anybody else. So during the conflict, he was able to have pre-trained skills. He was able to respond quickly, and he was able to break a hold, because remember, the suspect had a knife in him, break that hold, body slam him down, get that unbelievably valuable distance, draw his weapon, and end the problem. And folks, let me just say this about that. When you find yourself in that 2nd to 2-second start, that's when everything that you've trained, everything that you've prepared, everything that you've practiced, it all comes in now. And that's why I hear people say often, unfortunately, and there's a lot of YouTube experts, but I hear people say all the time, oh, I've got a gun, I could handle it. Really? Well, here's what I would say to you. If your analysis of your capability is I have a gun, I can handle it, and you don't have any training, it's kind of like taking your 16-year-old out, giving them a driver's test, letting them get their driver's license, and then they run the Indy 500. It doesn't go well. So, folks, here's what I'm going to say to you, wherever you are. We need training these days. We've got to have it. Training to protect your family, training to protect yourself, training maybe to protect other innocent people. And here's what I'm going to tell you about training. It doesn't come cheap. If you get cheap training, you're likely getting cheap instructors. And what do I mean by that? You need instructors that are formally trained, have experience, and have the ability and expertise in instruction. I tell people all the time who ask me about, hey, where do I go for training? Well, in your area, you got to do a lot of research, but I'm happy, if you want to send some stuff, I'll tell you my opinion. But I'll tell you, folks, I've seen stuff on YouTube that just make me shake my head. It's like, how could you train someone to do that? Because here's the reality. Every athlete listening knows this. If you don't have the foundational basics, if you don't have the basics of firearms, grip, stance, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger press, easily called out really hard to know and develop them. And when you know and develop them, much like a basketball player, the farther you go back, the more you hit baskets. So make sure you get good training. So the during, he responded well, and he was tactically in a good position. And then let's move to the after, because the after is really important here. He's been stabbed. Now he's put the assailant down, but now he's still in a life-threatening situation. And this is where medical self-care comes in. Two things. Number one is treating yourself. But number two, you got to get 911 activated right now. Now, let me ask you, stop and think about this. Put yourself in this position. Which is first? Guess what? They both should be done at the same time. Well, how do you do that, Tim? He looks at someone and says, call 911, and he's administering self-care. Because if he doesn't diminish that bleed, he's not going to make it until 911. But we don't want him making 911 calls if he can get others to assist him, which obviously he could in this situation. So the aftercare is huge. Maybe you're not wounded, but you still may have, after the confrontation, you may have another threat outside waiting to drive this guy away. So it's not over until it's over. And so the before, the during, and the after for this case are really important to think about, because here's the reality, folks. This is happening more and more. If you're in a uniform, you better be hyper vigilant. And, quite frankly, I get discouraged sometimes because I see officers, and, I was a police officer. This is not slamming police officers. But when I was an officer, I took being in shape very seriously because I didn't know when I would have to fight for my life. And I didn't want to be, Tim the Tubby officer out there trying to fight for my life. So here's the reality. If you're a police officer, you need to be fit. You need to be aware. You need to be game on. You know why? Because we need you. Our country needs you. Your family needs you. I can't say enough thank you for what you're doing. Police work is a whole different world right now. So just remember, folks, attacks can come at any time from any place. We're never going to be paranoid. We're not going to let this ruin our lives, but we're going to be wise and prepared, because at the end of the day, you matter. And this country needs good people, highly skilled, who can respond to problems. So with that said, I hope and pray that you're staying safe out there. I hope this is helpful. Do me a favor, please. I know I sound like I'm begging, but YouTube algorithm only lets my stuff go out if you like, share, subscribe, and comment. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you do that, we can create a safer place for all of us, because everybody everywhere needs this kind of personal defense training. So I hope and pray it's helpful. Please stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.